Today's guest is Riley Cote, who played 8 years of professional hockey, including 4 years in the NHL with the Philadelphia Flyers as an enforcer. He retired from playing at the age of 28, whereby he committed himself to a life dedicated to self-care, mindfulness, and personal development of himself, but not only of himself, but others as well. He is a courageous individual who has opened himself up to balancing all aspects of himself on the path with different modalities, including yoga and plant medicines. He is the co-founder of Athletes for Care, and he has been seen on the podcast with his partner, Nasty Knuckles, Derek Nasty Settlemyre. Welcome, Riley.
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, many people are shifting their paradigm or their story, to one of more authenticity, vulnerability, and like personal growth. As an athlete yourself, you opened yourself up. You're on the path of personal growth. Maybe you could just give us a little bit background in terms of the NHL, in terms of what type of personality you felt you were at that time, and what was going on in terms of the role and responsibility you had.
Yeah, I know it's a pretty deep topic when you kind of peel back the layers of the emotional state that I was in for those 8 years of professional hockey. Because outside of playing hockey, I decided to take on the role of the enforcer. So I was, preparing to fight on a regular basis. Every game basis, I was mentally preparing to fight. So my emotional state at the time, I was a young guy trying to live my childhood dream. I didn't understand how much it was taxing my emotional state and, that fight or flight response. I wasn't very spiritually evolved at the time, you could say, as far as, being that in tune with my emotional body and whatnot. But again, I was living my childhood dream, very egocentric, all about me and doing my role as the enforcer. And, as things shaped out, you keep fighting the wear and tear physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, that whole bit. I got to a point where I was broken down, and I would say I was forced to retire. I decided to retire on my own time, but it was one of those things. I felt called to do it, and that was really what propelled me to embark on this quest to heal and to find self and to grow and to find all these different dimensions of being. So I'm grateful for the experience. It's just a different mindset completely. You look back and I'm like, wow, it's just really coming out of a place of fear, and I've been able to identify where a lot of my former behaviors were coming from. So it's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's funny. Most of you want, when people are in a transformative state in their lives, they usually have to reflect back on their past in order to go forward. And I guess one of the main barriers that gets in the way is authenticity, of being true to who you are and feeling not only authentic but also vulnerable at the same time. And maybe you could just elaborate on that and how that shift took place from being a hockey player of the mindset of ego based and building a wall around yourself as to breaking those walls down.
Yeah, the transition was interesting, but I would say fairly quick for me. I was the way I'm wired. I'm kind of like all in, right? And so I embarked on this quest, and I had a relationship with some plant medicine, cannabis, and psilocybin. I used them to heal and really to kind of shed the old identity and kind of find a new version of myself spiritually, but kind of understand health as a whole. And there was obviously different healing modalities associated with, but I think pairing the plant medicine with the physical practice of yoga and understanding meditation and integrating all these things, I just felt called to be able to share this, right, and to be vulnerable, right? I mean, you see the cannabis movement or some of these movements, and it's all about storytelling, people opening up and sharing their personal experience with, their trauma and their healing, and how powerful that is, the ripple it is in the community and the network, and then, abroad. So I've been a pretty conservative guy my whole life. I've never been one to, I keep a lot to my chest, and pretty private guy, but, I felt, called to speak about my experiences with, say plant medicines that weren't so sexy at the time. Speaking about cannabis 12 years ago on the East Coast is, a pretty foreign thing. But again, you're speaking your truth, because it's like, why would you hide something so powerful
Right.
And not share the truth around it. So it was one of those things. I was putting myself in situations where I was just, speaking from the heart, from experience, and it just naturally kind of evolves as you kind of finding truth and speaking your truth, right? And being vulnerable was you mentioned being vulnerable. I just found like that opened up everything, because then you just open up opportunity and connection with people
Right.
going through the same thing, and it's pretty profound. But it was necessary, and I'm thankful for the journey, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, as a hockey fan myself, I played college baseball and I played ice hockey and I played a little roller hockey because I grew up in the New York area at the time when it was just roller skates and rollerblades and so on. But I remember myself having the mindset of feeling traumatized by issues in my house and trying to act out and try to be overly masculine and aggressive in the area of sports, specifically hockey. So in terms of feeling that like somebody was going to attack me, I need to attack them first or be on the offense. And that almost like a paranoid sense of participating in sports to try to gain my masculinity, so to speak. And as I went to hockey games in the 70s and the 80s, and I watched players like throwing their bodies around and just giving themselves up, so to speak, to the game and to the fans, I always used to question those actions and said, are they, is this really what they want to do? Is this something, is this something that they're going a little far and beyond where they just go home and they just like in a rat race of survival?
Yeah, that's pretty much it, right? I mean, it's self-preservation, and and I mean, who wouldn't want to score 50 goals instead of doing that, right? It's just like
Absolutely.
it's like growing up playing hockey. I was always the better player for my age group in my area, right? I mean, you're always like the Wayne Gretzky on your pond or your local community rink, right? But then as you grow, you go into bigger ponds and there's better players, and then you realize, holy shit, like like if I
Right.
really want this, I'm going to have to adjust my game, or I'm going to have to do this, this role that's really not hockey, but I mean, it is in the context of team sport hockey. But, when you talk about individual hockey growing up, like, you're
Right.
like, wow, this is like something surreal. But um, I was always a physical guy. I really did play a physical brand of hockey, as far as getting on the puck and laying the body, and generating some fights just by being a physical force. Like, I appreciated that. But then
Right.
when you take it further and you take on the role full time as the guy that's designated to fight, it's like a different dimension of being now, because now that's all you think about. Or at least for me, it was like I was consumed by the role. I almost forgot that I was a professional hockey player too. I was like,
Right.
it was
Right. Right.
fighting, it was calories, it was lifting weights, it was again trying to become this role. You could see what actors do when they become a role. I was like, because that wasn't really me. I'm a peaceful
I
guy.
know. Right.
That never engaged in street fights, minus a couple times in my life. But it was something that, again, I mentioned at the start, coming out of a place of fear. I grew up in the middle of Canada, and around a pretty rough crew of people, bikers, and the whole bit. And I never felt like I wanted to have to prove my toughness on the street by like fighting. You know what I mean? But then it almost kind of presented itself in hockey. So I got some street cred by being a hockey fighter in my neck of the woods from where I'm coming. It was, again,
Right.
fighting out of fear of letting myself down, my family down, but this toughness that I felt like I needed to present to the world. That was like, I mean, they say it was artificial. I mean, it was a created role in my mind to do a job on the ice, but it was, it landed up leaking on beyond that in my personal life, right? I mean, it's not healthy. It's certainly not
Right. Right.
healthy, and that was the biggest adjustment I had to make.
Well, I think I think as we go through life, even on a daily basis with family and people, we wind up getting into a mindset of ego protection or ego survival, especially if a trauma takes place or stress takes place in our life, where like we become wound up within a second. And the issue is how can we unwind ourselves? And you've incorporated some ways of unwinding and healing yourself from your past, not only in the NHL as the as the enforcer in terms of fighting, but also I guess unraveling that balance of masculinity, so to speak. And so you've incorporated different modalities like yoga and mindfulness, as well as plant medicines. Maybe you could just get into that a little bit of how you came about, finding that path.
Yeah, you know what? It seemed to kind of happen very naturally. Having had a relationship with cannabis and psilocybin growing up, very, very misunderstood relationship, but certainly it was a tool in my misunderstood toolbox. I eventually kind of understood that these were really legitimate medicines and therapeutic tools that, if used appropriately and deliberately, they were much more than the way I was using them. So pairing that with some nutritional healing. It was, cutting out a bunch of toxic shit that I was doing, eliminated alcohol for the first year. Just started to kind of look around my life and my daily behaviors and make change in essentially all of them. Right. And that landed up obviously transferring into the physical practice of my exercise. Right. So I was so used to lifting heavy weights and bodybuilding. Right. I wasn't even a very good functional hockey player as far as training at that point. I was just like so consumed by fighting, bodybuilding, just like, so it was so stiff, the joints, the spine, the neck. And then I had some concussion related issues. So I was like trying to go the other way. I was trying to lengthen the muscle and lengthen the spine. And I was making all these connections because of the brain, right? So really I was all around, I had these concussion related issues I was, forced to deal with. So I was going like all in again on like all these different modalities to see if they all could do their part in the assistance of, making my head feel better and just making me feel better. And naturally, when you do all these things in an integrated fashion, it's like, it's pretty amazing. But like the physical body is an amazing vessel. It's just trying to heal, right? And we just get in the way of the healing mechanisms. I found that yoga being amazing for, lengthening the spine, as I mentioned, just leaning out and just focusing on breath and just not making it a competition, not making like I have to do something and there's some sort of reward on the back end. It's just being present and, kind of integrating all these mindfulness practices in one. And I just recognize that, we're essentially standing human and antennas, but we're also we're human filters too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this lengthening process, helps with the spine and the brain, but then like being honest about what you're putting in your body, right? I mean, starting with like real, true hydration and remineralizing water, and then getting into food, right? I mean, what we're eating is a huge part of who we are, and cutting out the poison and the toxicity, because part of yoga philosophy is elimination, it's purification, or we're trying to clean the vessel so we can be more intuitive and be more clear and focused. So I think that whole diet part, and recognizing that we're human filters, we're taking on our environment, so we have to be ultra aware of what we're putting on and in our bodies, and how it affects our mindset, right, and our emotional and spiritual state. So it's all these things. I know I'm rambling now, but it's just like, the plant medicines have been extreme catalysts, for pain management. I was in a lot of pain when I first retired, lower back pain, post-surgery pain. So, cannabis was a super helpful tool. Didn't use, any pharmaceuticals, just cannabis. And I proved to myself, it's like, wow, it's like we got a lot more power than we think we have.
Right.
Like this is like taking this into your own hands and being honest with, say the science of cannabis. It's like, it's still a Schedule I drug, but it's highly medicinal and therapeutic. You have, I don't know how many, 38 states have, medical cannabis programs. And it's historically been a medical and therapeutic plant. So, I mean, it's like, it made sense at the time that, this plant that I've been using this whole time is actually medicine. And I feel strong enough, I believe strong enough in it that I would support it and stand for it and be vulnerable around it. And that's kind of why I'm like, when I speak about this, I feel the need to talk about these plant medicines because they're great catalysts to get people onto the mat, or get people like off the bed and standing up. People are in different parts of their healing journey. Some people are pretty banged up physically, so cannabis is a pretty gentle tool to help
Yeah.
get people to move along.
I mean, in terms of our lives, we try to, as I said before, I talk about the ego in terms of building a wall around ourselves, and
Mm-hmm.
many of people's experiences are to try to open ourselves up to a higher level of consciousness, whether it's through sometimes actual injuries or traumas of how the soul is trying to be heard and to be a voice. And as you speak about psilocybin as a mushroom plant medicine, and having the potential with DMT to almost detract part of our consciousness, so we're able to actually see ourselves in a safer place, or in a place where we're going through trauma, or and look at it as I guess we're outside of ourselves, right? Um,
Hmm.
I know I do shamanic work, and I know people take ayahuasca, which also is a mind altering type of plant medicine that creates that effect as well, and where people have breakthroughs. Um, but in terms of your work, like in assisting other people or yourself, how does a person get involved in doing this type of work itself, and how do you help them?
Yeah, so for sure. I mean, I have experience with all the ones you mentioned actually, and all profound in their own way. I mainly work with psilocybin. We do that in Jamaica legally, where it's unregulated, and we have government support as far as for training and learning more about how to be a practitioner. But I think all three of them, and there's probably more. That it's all about say disconnecting temporarily from the ego, or the ego temporarily disconnecting from the body, and specifically bufo, where you're offline 5-6 minutes, and you're just pure spirit cruising through the ether. I think mushrooms and ayahuasca, there's more. You're still more connected to your physical body. I mean, however, I mean it's extremely transformative, in the sense of how it has a way of showing you that you are not the physical body, you're not the mind, and it really has a way of humbling your presence, and then helps you understand connection and the whole bit. And mushrooms and ayahuasca have a different way of doing it, but both equally profound, as well as the 5-MeO bufo experiences, to just again have a way of just making it not be about you, this like selfless attitude, and this attitude of gratitude, and just like these high vibe energies that come out of it, are just where you know what I mean, like let go of all that stuff you're holding on to, because it's like it's just holding you back, and but amazing teachers, it shows you what you already know. Like every spiritual and religious text talks about most of these fundamentals, I would think.
Yeah, yeah.
Cover the foundation of it, right? That self-love, right? That love, the energy of selfless action, and the whole bit, right? It's just the positive karmic energy you get by living that way, and how your life just transforms through the understanding of the stuff. But I think it has a very gentle way. I mean, ayahuasca was say a pretty rough experience for the first little while, but magically beautiful, and it shows you just like, wow, it's like it has this like really wild way of showing you what you need to see at that time and moment, and I think these could be an amazing catalyst to help say jumpstart the spiritual quest for people. I think we're in a point of crises right now spiritually. I think we've become spiritually bankrupt, so I think the sooner we can accept and adopt some sort of safe and practical way of getting people psychedelic therapy to be the catalyst to help, again, ignite some spirit and some fire in them. I'm a huge supporter of.
Yeah, I mean, many people are hooked into the system of the pharmaceutical industry and feeling like they can hold on to a handrail for support. And people have been programmed in that mindset to be reliant and not taking their own health in their own hands with diet, nutrition, as well as some of the things you talk about in terms of spirituality and a connection to a higher purpose. What was the opinion of some of the players that when you started sharing this information? Did they take an understanding to it? Were they resistant? What was the image that you felt was being altered amongst them?
What I learned is that everyone's craving knowledge and looking for the next best thing, something that's going to optimize their health and performance. So naturally, I mean, you look at athletes, there's especially the modern day athletes, so in tune with their body. They're very in tune with recovery and regeneration, which like 20, 30 years ago wasn't a thing. So naturally, something like cannabis, or even some of these functional mushrooms like lion's mane, and getting into psilocybin are intriguing for these guys, right? Because there's so much money in sport, and there's so much money to be made, and recovery and performance are the two things that they can control. So I thought my response was like, wow, I mean, everyone is like, you realize everyone's seeking for something better than what they're currently offered.
Absolutely.
So the great feedback on on the cannabis, on the psilocybin, and it just creates more curiosity. Even if people like are completely anti, their ears are perked, they're sniffing around, because you can't suppress the truth forever, right? I mean, it's like, this is not new information. We're just like bringing this information to the forefront. I mean, it's, so you have to shed that old way of thinking where it's like, no, this, the way I used to think is the way I'm always going to think. You can't change that, right? I mean, I think you have to shift the way you think around some of these things, right? It's the propaganda. It's a lot of brainwashing around the drug culture. So it's just the shift, our awareness around it.
Yeah. I think what you're doing is very courageous, because you have the potential in the position you're in as a sports figure, and having had a career in the NHL, of reshaping the image or role that a male has, or what the role of a male should be, and the pressures that come along with working through those particular steps to actually find oneself. And I know for myself, I work with try to have a masculine balance of trying to incorporate the left and the brain parts of ourselves so that we are balanced. But I think it takes time for a person to go through their own struggles for them to really find who they are, other than just learning through, reading, so to speak. So I think textbook stuff is good, but life experience is best. And I think your story presents itself as such, which was motivating, inspiring for me to hear. That's why obviously I'm interested in speaking with you. What is your philosophy in terms of having a son, let's say, and raising a son, or dealing with other children or boys? Like, how would it be different than the way you were raised, or maybe I was raised?
You know what? I think very deliberate practice of ahimsa, not nonviolence. And not that I was ever. I grew up in an environment where it was promoted, but deliberately, having that mindset of peace and love, and choosing love, right? That's what I teach my two kids, my two girls. It's choose love, because you have a choice, and it's like it lands up being in the moment as an emotion, but how you act and how you engage in the world. If you're always choosing love and you live by that, that premise, I think you're bound to find a more happy, more fulfilled, and positive life, right? I mean, there's obviously going to be adversity, and I think there's other teachings along the way, but that's one. Growing up deliberately teaching that, and being more present. I do with my kids. I mean, I got caught up in it as well as being distracted. Technology is amazing, but we have to create boundaries, right? And having boundaries around technology and how much information you're allowing in, and time to shut down the information and act. You mentioned it earlier, it's like taking action. You can only consume so much, you take in so much information, and then you got to go take action. You got to go do something. You got to go live and be and all that stuff. So just boundaries around technologies, and boundaries around, say food. I mean, boundaries around everything. The sooner we can have boundaries and understand them, to me, that starts the development of discipline.
Absolutely.
And I think the world doesn't have a whole lot of it right now. So it's kind of getting back to that martial arts ancient way of being, right? It's what it is. It's yogi, it's the sage, it's the martial artist, it's the shaman, right? It's just very disciplined. You have to have discipline if you want to have wellness. There's the wholeness there, it's associated with it, that you can't get any other way. You have to have balance.
Yeah, that dark night of the soul, so to speak.
Right.
Where we
Absolutely.
go through that period of either a physical or an emotional trauma, or revisiting our childhood, or issues that we want to question in terms of going forward. I could speak for myself, having two children who are in their 30s, in terms of working on myself in order to be an example of some things that maybe could shift in them. And you, for example, are a life coach. On your website, Cote Culture. Very interesting ideology and thinking. What is your philosophy in terms of dealing with someone and coaching them? What's the end game for them that you're trying to help them with?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it's probably around the yoga philosophy, which is teaching them to be able to control their mind. And the physical practice of yoga really is to prime the spine and prepare the body to sit in meditation, right? So I think ultimately, if you can control your mind in a fashion where you can control your energy and concentrate your energy, you're in creator mode. And I think you have infinite possibilities. When you're in this mode. So it's human optimization. It's just, again, all the things we kind of talked about here. it's just understanding environment as energy. You do shamanic work, right? I mean, it's really teaching people understand energy and how they can, you know, and then maybe teaching them how to define God, right? Too, because I think understanding that intelligence is important to understand how much energy we can connect to. It's nonstop all day if we choose to. So it's a really basic awareness, you know, just awareness of your environment and your thoughts and the present moment, right? I mean, yoga is all about the present moment. And then it's like, if we're not in the present moment, we're either in a state of anxiety or depression, right? We're in the future or the past. So I would say my philosophy in general pretty much aligns with the overall arching philosophy of what yoga teaches, right? I mean, the second Yoga Sutra is Patanjali talks about the yoga is the practice of quieting the mind, right? And that's right. So, you know, what people see in the yoga studio is just part and parcel. It's like, you know, one fraction of the work that needs to be done, you know, when you talk about practicing being present and concentration and mindfulness, right? It's not just like, you know, 1 hour a week, right? I mean, it's like, right. It's something you try and make part of your life so you can find flow state and creative flow, right? Because you're so ultra present, you understand what's robbing you of energy and what's giving you energy, and separating the two. And again, creating those boundaries, that structure. It's the only way to become disciplined that I found, you know.
Yeah.
Have to have boundaries. You have to say no. You have to turn things off sometimes. You have to make yourself unavailable sometimes, you know, because, you know, that time is important, you know. That's where the gold is.
With knowing what you know now, and let's say you would just started an NHL career with this mindset, would it either helped you or put you in a different position of choosing hockey or not choosing hockey?
You know, I think I was still chosen hockey. I just think that I would have been more of a, you know,
50-goal scorer.
A 50-goal scorer. Yeah, I would have honed in the Wayne Gretzky in me growing up. You know, I just like completely lost track of, you know, the idea of creating a physical body for hockey specifically, like functional training for hockey. It wasn't really a thing.
Right.
But, you know, at that time, and then in that evolution is when I became a fighter. So I was like, you know, becoming less functional as a hockey player, more functional as a, you know, I probably wasn't even that functional as a fighter. You look at the way these martial artists train. I was like, you know, a meathead. I was a street fighter, you know. So I would have still played hockey, but I would have just been extremely mindful. It's like, okay, we're gonna master the skills of hockey. But then it's like the other thing we can master is concentration in the mind. I think the physical body is overtrained, in my opinion, but no one's teaching concentration. No one's teaching focus and mindfulness, right? As an actual skill. You know, you can say, yeah, do that while you're practicing your skills. Yeah, obviously, but separate. And to me, that's going to be the difference. How many guys did I see, you know, playing hockey, coaching hockey, that had the skill, they had the physical ability, they had, you know, the hockey IQ, but as far as like pressure and adversity and, you know what I mean, their emotional state, they were just all over the place. Stress, they would take on everything, overthink everything, and then you're getting away from the creative game, which is playing out from the heart, right? Hockey's a creative sport. There's flow. But you get in your head, just like anything, you get in your head, you're not a very good performer. So you see these guys that, you know, never break through, never make it, and it's only because they're getting in their own way. They're too much in the head. So to answer your question, I think it would be, again, it's like teaching them the mind, how the mind works, the awareness on the mind, and how to concentrate it. Teach them how to use technology. Teach them how to, you know, use their time and create those boundaries, you know, because I think those are important when you talk about preparing to be an elite athlete. And the creating the mindset is like, you know, there's going to be stress, there's going to be adversity, but we stay consistent. You know, we're not like an emotional wreck where you just become a disaster and, you know, blow the night, you know? So I think those can be trained. And I think they are to some degree, but I think like specifically, I think that organizations owe that to their players, you know, take care of and preserve their mental health.
That was my next question. I watched an interview with Chris Nilan and Ted Nolan, and Ted Nolan spoke about Pat LaFontaine with his head injuries with John Muckler. And I believe that Ted Nolan went into the office or told Pat LaFontaine that he should sit out based upon what he saw in terms of viewing his, you know, his physical condition. And I think Muckler came down on Nolan for telling him that he had to sit out, irregardless of the physiological changes and stuff that were going on. And so when I heard that, I said to myself, based upon what you just said now, Does the NHL have any of these protocols of using some type of shift in paradigm or incorporating any type of emotional or spiritual? Are there any coaches that you know of, or that maybe there's a shift that would take place?
I'm not sure 100%, teaching the emotional and spiritual. I think there's definitely more mindfulness, just like
Mindfulness.
naturally, yeah, incorporated into just like, the basic foundation of the training, right? When away from like heavy lifting, right? There's really no weights. It's more like all body weight. So again, naturally, that's mindfulness in exercise, more functional. But as far as coaches that I know, like specifically on the stuff you're talking about, I'm not sure yet. I know certain players have their own personal people that they work with, whether you call them mindfulness coaches or,
Yeah.
life coaches or, something like that. I think naturally it's evolving to much more of a mindful game. Again, there's so much money in it. There's so many resources now. I see it. I see that's like the next big thing is teaching them emotional intelligence, right? Emotional awareness. Because I think even like sexual energy, it's like one of these things that I'm become fascinated with because growing up, it's like, well, no one teaches you about sex energy, but from what I understand, it's like the most powerful energy, and it's if it's directed the right way in a creative fashion and a performance fashion. You can do some amazing things with it. I know that maybe that's maybe that's too far ahead, but baby steps, I guess. But just bringing awareness around, the body and the power. Breath. Breath
Yeah.
work has now become a thing in hockey, right? It's like, you never see anybody doing breath work. 5-10 years ago, 20 years ago, you'd laugh at you guys are still smoking cigarettes in the locker room then. So
Right. Absolutely.
the mindset has shifted for sure. And I think we keep leveling up and being honest with the narrative.
You have a podcast with Derek Settlemyre, Nasty Knuckles, and I've been a fan of watching the different various podcasts related to hockey. And obviously, yours stood out to me based upon who you are and the path that you've taken, as I mentioned before. Just give the audience a little bit of a background of what the podcast centers around.
Yeah, so Nasty Knuckles is a Philadelphia Flyers centric hockey podcast with my good buddy Derek Settlemyre. He was formerly the equipment manager for the Flyers for like 10 plus years in the NHL in some way, shape, or form for over 20, and just a great storyteller, but just a good buddy. And we came up with the idea of coming together and taking advantage of our networks. We figured like, we know all these guys, we have so many stories, and he got this great spot at his house where he's kind of created a hockey pro shop. So like, why don't we create a little studio, a little podcast, and bring in some former Flyers, current Flyers. And we started that I guess 2 seasons ago, going on our third here, and 86 episodes deep. I say all but maybe 5 guys have been within the Philadelphia Flyers system in some way, shape, or form. So it's been a lot of fun. It helps me stay connected to the game and connected to people in my circle as much as possible, and you get some good laughs out of it. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's interesting because the Philadelphia Flyers, in terms of the last few years, have detached themselves somewhat from the physical type of play.
Yeah.
I'm a New York Ranger fan, and I've watched the Rangers and obviously the Flyers play. So for me, it's very interesting to see, and I've always felt like that image has been a little bit subdued over the last years. But yet now, as we're talking about the shift in this paradigm shift in terms of consciousness and moving forward, there will be it's almost cyclical that some type of aggression or some type of action will now be probably coming forward in order for the image, the Broad Street Bullies, and that whole genre of what took place in the past may be pushing forward with John Tortorella and the whole shift.
Yep. Yeah,
So
I agree with bringing the Torts was a great move, and then they signed the toughest guy that was available in free agency, Nick Delorier, who Flyer fans will love. So for a Flyer fan, I'd like to think there are a 2 big signings as far as bringing some identity and some spirit back into the building. They're probably not a playoff team. However, the way they're going to lose games is going to be certainly different than the way they lost games last year. There's going to be a dogfight, and I think it's going to be entertaining. Between the performance on the ice, I think energy will be increased, and then towards post game, the emotional the emotional media cues, so I'm actually looking forward to the season
Yeah,
for the first time in a couple of years. So
it'll be interesting seeing, especially on the Ranger games, Ranger Flyer games. That'll be interesting,
right.
as well as the Penguins itself.
Sure.
As you go forward from this point, going on, what are your plans and goals? Like, what are you you're looking to do?
My personal mission is to really bridge the worlds we're talking about here, the world of taking action, the world of physical practice of yoga philosophy, and using some sort of catalyst, a psychedelic, to help propel you onto this path. But I think the integration is the yoga, right? We need to take action, and we need to keep working on ourselves. We need to keep cleaning the vessel. And we're daily practice, building this daily practice, I think is so important. So, whether they're taught separately, they're heavily integrated. You know what I mean? If you're gonna play with the plant medicines, you need to have some sort of daily practice. It doesn't have to be yoga, Tai Chi, just move mindfully. It's like really about not putting stress on the body, breathing, and finding the present moment. Whatever that looks like for you, create your own version of that. But I think, again, the world needs some sort of spiritual jumpstart. I think these plant medicines can really help ignite some fire back into the human spirit. And again, we're healing as a whole, right? The medical model is almost forgotten that we're spiritual beings. It's the body, it's the mind. It's like, it's like, to me, a lot of these issues we're dealing with are spiritual issues. So it's going to get more connected. And again, you have to take action. We have to take action in life. It's not just about reading and philosophy. It's just, there has to be some connection to this intelligence, this energetic system that gives us energy all day. I'm just standing outside in the sun for an hour. You know what I mean? Just taking it in, and just
Absolutely.
connecting. But it's all free. Just go take care. Go take advantage of it.
Where could people reach you if they're interested in, life coaching or in terms of trying the plant medicines?
Yeah, I mean, you can reach out to me at rileycote.com, the place to hit the email button, and then I would guide them if they're interested in these legal psilocybin mushroom retreats, to the folks at Wake. Take care of the rest of it, but but I do integration, I do pre-integration and post integration, the whole bit. So there's other stuff to talk about. Obviously, there's more to this spiritual journey than just the psychedelic experience itself. But like I said, if people are in desperation mode, I think it's an amazing tool to help just recharge the spirit, and then obviously they got to go back and do the work. But reaching out on rileycote.com is probably the best place.
Yeah, so I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to work with you. You're a very inspiring individual who has opened the door for athletes and other people alike to be able to have a pathway to feel safe and to reach a new paradigm of self growth and self love, which is what we're all after. We don't realize it, but we're on the path of trying to really find the love within ourselves that we cut away or we discarded as we grow up, or as we move forward. So thank you very much, Riley.
Yeah, no, thank you. And you said it. That's exactly it. It's that self-love, right? That's looking inwards and finding peace and living out of the heart, man. It's it. Self-love. It's summed it up very nicely.